The gospel reading today comes from the Gospel of Mark. This is chapter 13, verses 1 through 8. Jesus was teaching. He was sitting in the temple teaching. And as he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will this be? And what will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished?" Then Jesus began to say to them, "Beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and said, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, don't be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. But this is but the beginning of the birth pangs." May God add blessing and understanding to the reading today. So what a week, huh? What a week. I have heard from so many of you the wide range of emotions that are going on in many of us. And once again, I want to start by encouraging each of us to tend our emotions. Honor them. Notice what's going on in you. If you need to grieve, grieve. If you're angry, find a healthy way and a safe way of getting that anger out. If you're celebrating, celebrate. I don't expect all of us to think the same way, and I certainly don't expect all of us to vote the same way. Your vote is precious, and it's your voice, and I encourage you to continue to speak that into the world. And I will say that I personally am actually very worried about the direction our country is going. But I'm also not surprised. Whatever you think of Mr. Trump, what we do know is that it's likely to be a chaotic ride over the next 4 years. We've seen the chaos before, likely to be chaotic again. And that is the reality that we need to face. Let's not deny it. Let's not pretend it's something other than it is. Let's not say everything's fine. It's part of what got us into this trouble, I think. This is what it is. We've done it before. We can do it again. As the reality begins to sink in, I'm going to encourage us to continue to face what we need to face. And then at some point, we just need to get to work. We need to get to work. Clearly, Democrats have missed a lot about what people in this country are thinking or feeling. That seems very clear to me. That we had to turn to this man again tells me that there is a desperation of many folks in this country that's not being acknowledged. And as those who are followers in the way of Jesus, we have a lot of work to do, because if the new president does what he has said he's going to do, there are going to be many people whose lives are going to be turned upside down. Many folks who don't look like me who are going to find their lives incredibly difficult. And folks that look like me, we can hunker down. We can just be protective of what we have. We can not say what needs to be said. We can not put ourselves out there to fight for justice. But let me be clear, I don't believe that's the way of Jesus. That would not be the way of Spirit. And that's not the way that I'm going to go. We can also go down the path of demonizing the others who voted differently than we did. We can demonize the political folks who enact policies that may frustrate the heck out of us. Policies that may hurt people. We can take our hurt and anger and we can spew it into the world and onto so many others. But that is not the way of Jesus, nor the teachings of Jesus. No matter how tempting it might feel, that is not the way to go. And I refuse to go in that direction. I choose to work to keep my behavior and my teachings firmly in the way of the Christ, in the ways of building up, in the way of caring for others, working on behalf of others, in the ways of fighting for justice. As I work to do what I said last week, and what Jesus has been saying from the beginning, as I work to love my neighbor as I love myself. We must embrace that voice right now. And we must embrace that we may now be a minority voice. And guess what? A minority voice in this culture and in the church at large. And it's okay. That is okay, because our calling is to follow a different voice than the voice of the world around us. Our calling from the beginnings when Jesus was teaching, was to be something different in this world. It's okay because our calling is to love in the way and in the name of the Christ. And that has always flown in the face of the culture. Always. I chose the gospel passage today for many reasons. The passage begins with the disciples looking at those beautiful physical stones of the temple. Oh, magnificent, gorgeous, beautiful, maybe even eternal in their view. And yet, Jesus uses them, the physicality of them, to point to a deeper spiritual reality. And many have interpreted this passage as Jesus knows what's coming. It's a prophecy. I'm pretty clear that he was using it as a teaching moment about where our vision needs to be. He was pointing us to look with spiritual sight and not just physical sight. He was saying, those are great stones, but guess what? There's something else going on. Those seem eternal, but I want to point you to something that is eternal. For me, they represent the structures of humanity. They represent the religious system. And although they are beautiful, they are not God. They are not spirit. The systems and structures of humanity we know are flawed and are often broken, and they often miss the needs of the people. That's one thing that I hear over and over again that's pretty clear, that millions of the people in this country are saying that something is broken in Washington. They know the rich are getting richer and the poor are struggling mightily in the richest country in the world. And the only one who's saying that it's broken is Mr. Trump. Ms. Harris said that everything is going well, and basically she wouldn't change a thing. There's room for improvement, but it's basically okay. People all over the country know that's not true. Bernie Sanders came out and said, that's not true. This passage reminds us that we have to look more deeply and more closely because the systems will fall. Passage says that that's not the end, that's actually necessary for the new thing to come into being. It's not an ending, it's a new beginning. Birth pangs are those signs of a new beginning. I remember a lesson from my mythology class in college that the mythology folks say that when the world is 50-50, that means that there's something of spirit that's trying to make itself known and we just don't see it yet. How many of us have heard it's 50-50 for like the last 10 years? Every election, oh my God, it's 50-50. Oh my goodness, it's like 51-49. Oh, it's just that margin. It's 50-50. there's something that's trying to make its way out. And it's actually amazing how frequently we can hear that. This was picked up by Brian McLaren. There's a link in the resources, who's talking about, he has a beautiful post about this new thing being born, this new thing that's trying to come forth in spirit. But the old system is clawing and scratching like a cornered and wounded animal and will take down whatever it needs to on its way out the door. It's a powerful image for me. The heart of the Christian message and the heart of the eternal cycle of life is death and resurrection. Old life, death, resurrection, new life. And we tend to think of this, I think, as just a cool idea that happened to Jesus. Yay, good for him. But in times like this, it is a deeper understanding of something that's happening in our world, on a societal scale, on a maybe even world scale. And that dying of the old understanding, that dying of the old thing, so that the new one can enter the world, is difficult. It's painful. Some of us would say it stinks. For me, the old would include our system of abusive capitalism, how we think of the church, even Christianity. The Christianity that I saw throughout this election had some real issues with it. How we see and honor our neighbors / immigrants / people of color, those neighbors. How we deal with and care for the creation. Some of us know we're in this crisis and rarely do we talk about it. Many of these perspectives must die so that the new way of being in our world can emerge. Many of us want to get through life without going through the hard stuff. I get it. I understand that. I want the same thing, by the way. Please, God, don't give me hard stuff. However, our oldest stories of who we are as a people talk about coming out of slavery through wilderness time to get to the promised land. Jesus drew on that language all the time. We have to go through the wilderness to get to that better and more holy place. It's the only way. We can't pole vault over the wilderness. It just doesn't work that way. And let's be clear that this is not just a physical struggle. It's not about the rocks. It's not about those the beautiful temple. This is a spiritual struggle. How we see others and treat others is a spiritual struggle. How our society amasses wealth and yet underpays employees, that's a spiritual problem. Profits over people is a spiritual problem. It's a struggle of our awareness. The struggle is to get to the thinking of others and not just ourselves. It's a struggle to look beyond our own individual safety and security, to make sure our brothers and sisters have that same safety and security, that which we want. And in the midst of this spiritual struggle, we have to hold on to that new thing that is being born. Because clearly, we haven't learned the lesson yet, because we have to go through it again. Clearly, we haven't seen what we need to see, because even with the experience of Trump's leadership of 4 years, this country voted him in again. More resoundingly this time. To my mind, clearly it hasn't gotten bad enough for us to wake up to the importance of morals, of values, of truth-telling, of care for others. And please don't get me wrong. All of this breaks my heart because people, I think, are going to be hurt if he actually does what he said he's going to do. I'm hoping it's all bluster, but I'm not counting on it. With each right that is being taken, the old broken system becomes more and more clear so that we can face it head on. So with all that, what do we do? That's going to be something that we're going to face into. First, we grieve and we feel what we need to feel. Feel it. Use it to inspire you. Use it to learn. Use it to grow. Use it to shift. Use it to allow the Spirit to do the Spirit's work in you so that you can keep growing in your awareness, in your strength, in your understanding. Then we need to organize. We need to get connected, and we need to build relationships. In times of elections, our communities become frayed. I don't want to talk to those people because they think a certain way. I think these people are over here. It's all da. We need to rebuild. We need to rebuild relationships. We need to rebuild community. We need to get connected. And we become what Christianity was always meant to be. And what Jesus was, a resistance to the ways of the world. A resistance movement to care for those who don't have the power to care for themselves. I was on a mass call on Thursday night with the Working Families Party, Indivisible, Move On, all these progressive organizations. I encourage you to get involved. This is what we need to do. Get connected and know that you are not alone. You're not going through this alone. And while we do that, we need to be attentive to the new thing that is being born. We need to watch and to get in on the new thing that the Spirit is doing, so we celebrate signs of new life. We celebrate when we hear William in the back of the church, right? Because that's a sign of new life. That's a sign of the next generation coming up behind us. He's in our midst. Can we celebrate that? Talk to many women, and birth pangs are not fun. Am I right? I've never been through it, so I don't know. Right? They aren't fun. They don't feel good. They're painful. Yet often, and I'm not making any blanket statements because I haven't been through it, but often after the birth, they see the new life. They're like, oh, it was worth it. Most of the time, right? Am I right? Most of the time? Okay, just checking. That is what we're shooting for. We have to hold on to that vision of what's coming. If we're really the church of Christ, this is our opportunity to live into our deeper calling as the prophetic voice in the world. That voice of love, that voice of justice, the voice of unity, the voice of deeper truth that confronts the worldly versions of truth that we're likely to hear spun and offered to us rapid fire over the next 4 years. Anybody remember that? Oh, this is real, this is real, this is real, this is real, and none of it's real. That's coming. We're going to be pointed down hundreds of rabbit holes. And if we go there, we're going to miss what the Spirit is doing. We're going to get drawn into something, a place, and a people that we do not want to be. And if you're wondering if this is new, this is not. There's plenty of historical precedent, starting with our beginnings as people organized around the radical teachings of Jesus. The radical inclusivity, the radical love, the radical vision of God's reign on earth. And guess what? The people who were embracing that had to meet in catacombs. They had to come up with signs and symbols so they didn't get persecuted, so they didn't get taken away. I'm not saying that's happening to us. I'm not even thinking that. But this is our historical precedent. They were trying to stay true to Spirit and be community in the midst of the powerful and oppressive Roman occupation. At our best, my friends, we have been the embodiment of the alternative reality to the ways of this world. It's time to pick up that mantle once more. We've made it through 4 years of chaos before, and we will make it through 4 more years. We will. But how are we going to make it through? Who are we going to be in the midst of it? Who are we going to follow in the midst of it? So please, grieve if you need to grieve, but do not lose hope. And then let us roll up our sleeves. Let's get to work to be the people of God in this world. Amen.